In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites, MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed. This morning we're going to tackle the topic rebound or on the rebound relationships. And when I think about the cause of someone that's on the rebound, what comes to my mind, and this is just me going right to the chase, is when someone is finding out, someone is experiencing the pain and the hurt when they realize, listen to me, when they realize that they aren't as important to someone as they thought they were. When someone actually starts the actual process of one on a rebound is when one is experiencing and finding out the pain and the hurt that they're not as important as they thought to another person. That's not an aha moment for the person on the other side. That's a real death-defying piece of information that they're experiencing or how they go about experiencing that actually changes them emotionally and mentally. And that's something that really drives and pinpoints and points someone to the end of how are they going to adjust to this rejection? How are they going to come about and really feel the warmth and the conditioning that they've had before about this individual? In a lot of cases at the beginning of these types of relationships, when that type of news is brought upon, the relationship ends unexpectedly. And what happens next on the rebound or end is that they take the pain, they pack up the hurt, and they move on. Listen to what I'm saying about being on the rebound. You've experienced that what you thought emotionally from another person isn't true. It's not an aha moment. Then in return, the relationship ends unexpectedly. And you, emotionally drained and hurt, you take the pain, you pack up the hurt, and you move on. And you move on to the next relationship. That's where we have the on the rebound approach. And what's not sincere, but what's really to the point is that there are many people with this belief that the on the rebound tactic is supposed to get them over what they've left behind. It's supposed to get them to relax and bring them to the point to where this hurt and this pain that they've experienced from this rejection is supposed to move them into another relation and put it behind them, where emotionally they're still attached. Emotionally, there's an enormous amount of pain, there's an enormous amount of hurt that they have packed along for the journey into this next relationship. And this is real. This is every day in regards of what many people go through. And the truth of the matter is that we will definitely have to be on our guard in regards of doing so. But before we dive into the topic even deeper, let's go before the Lord and let's pray. Father, you are the source and the substance of all who we are, Father. We ask you, Father, that you guide us and that you direct us, Father, that you bring peace upon us, O Lord, and that you will give our audience ears to hear, O Lord. Protect them, O Lord. In Christ Jesus' name, amen. Rebound relationships. Being hurt. Being able to manage the ill feelings and then being able to respond in a way that you have to protect yourself from further damage. The neglect that a lot of people do is they carry the pain, they carry the hurt, and they move on to the next relationship. But the truth of the matter is that in most cases, the individual emotional availability comes into question. Their emotional availability comes into question by moving on so suddenly. We come to the point, Lady P, that people get this news and it's death-defying to them emotionally. at one sense, it's, I can't believe I'm hearing this. I can't believe this is happening, because there is an assumption that they meant more to the relationship. And now they find that the emotional tie that they thought they had didn't exist, never exists, or no longer exists. They're now faced with an enormous situation about their emotional ability now and moving on. And I think this is crucial in regards of how we build ourselves up, or have us in a position to really realize the right steps after receiving types of news like this. I think it's very hard for the current emotional state of an individual of being involved in a new relationship. That particular part comes front and center. To be in a position to where you've received such bad news, the type of rejection, the type of hurt, the type of pain that comes about being directed toward one, the current emotional state now and moving on into a newer relationship becomes front and center. It becomes front and center on how the individual that's been wounded take this pain and this hurt into a new relationship, where the unexpected person that's now thinking about a new relation growing together isn't fully aware of what truly lies behind the emotional tie or the attraction. And I think that's very crucial when it comes down to us understanding the on the rebound relationship approach, because now it's a sense of, am I just a substitute for the love that you just lost? Is there an emotional attachment that we can grow together? There's an enormous amount of what ifs now happens when we move on after being after we've been able to receive the type of rejection that we have. We have to be able, in a lot of sense, of knowing that in relationships like this, there is a point to where moving on isn't always the best antidote for relief from the pain and the hurt that one's received from the rejection from a prior relationship. Moving on isn't always the best antidote. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but one of the things that I think is very crucial when we start or we find ourselves in this particular type of relationship is understanding that being alone and rediscovering yourself have to play an enormous role prior to moving on into another relationship. We have to be able to come full force with understanding that, yes, we've been rejected. We are now experiencing the pain and the hurt, that we have been told that what we thought doesn't exist or no longer exists, and moving on and bringing that pain and that hurt into a new relationship, that's not always the right approach. I believe the right approach now is for the individual to stand still and learn how to heal themselves, learn how to be alone, learn how to love themselves, discover better in their lives, discover better. Understand that what you've experienced may have not been fair, but moving on and carrying on that hurt and that pain into another relationship isn't fair neither.
With all that you said, I think the correct way of moving on, as you were speaking, I was thinking of Christ, how, being with his disciples for those 3 years, in ministry. And then at the point where he had one betrayed him, where he had one deny him, he had to move on with what it was that he knew that he had to do. And so sometimes moving on, I agree with what you're saying, not jump into another relationship. But if you're moving on means you're moving closer to God, then that's the plus there. Because that's exactly what I was just visualizing Christ as you was talking. which is the right direction to go. In spite of what was just happening to Christ at those final hours, he moved on. He moved on connecting with God. He moved on, and that's part, and he was able to move on because he had already known that if God can do what he did for Lazarus, then he knew
Amen.
that God could do it for him. And so sometimes moving on is hard, but when you already have a problem and you already have seen the solution, you're able to move on. And that's why it's so crucial that when we are hurting or we are in pain, that if there are other people or other situations that of, that will just give you the encouragement to move on, it helps. But again, my point that I'm trying to bring out is that what you're saying just brought me to Christ, because he was denied, he was betrayed, but his move on, he had to move on. And so when we take the approach of, yes, I had to move on, but I'm moving on to what I know God is calling me to do, or I'm moving on to what God has me to do, knowing that he already has the problem solved, it makes it much easier. Yes, I totally agree that we shouldn't go from one relationship to another, because we will do all the things that you're saying. We're just taking our hurts and our pains with us to that next relationship. So you do have to take the time to give that hurt and pain to the Lord, and let him help you to deal with the hurt that you are just walking away from.
I think you bring up a marvelous point, because that time that you decide to be alone, to rediscover yourself and love yourself and discover the things to which is better, I feel also brings in everything you just said, spiritually and emotionally, tying the tie together and understanding that, the strength and the growth and the maturity that can come from redeveloping a relationship with Christ, or coming closer to Christ, or taking what you have and placing it on a shelf and allowing Christ to see you through it. I think everything you just said drives home the point that we need to be very cautious when it comes down to those sudden moves in regards of moving on and taking along our pain and our hurt and our rejection onto new relationships and not healing correctly. And when we talk about healing correctly, it goes into a lot of the things that you just said, bringing Christ closer to you in this period where it's just you and him. And that's one way in which we can heal. Vice taking your pain, taking your hurt, and moving that on, carrying that on into a new relationship. For our Facebook audience, please let us know where you're seeing us from. Give us some comments as the discussion go on. We'll like to hear your input as the series and the topics continue. But for today's time, if someone is out there who is on the rebound, or a receiver of a relationship who's on the rebound, I think it's very important too that and we covered this several series ago, of asking the hard questions before you cross the bridge into a new relationship, because you will never know if I am bringing hurt and pain into a relationship with you if you don't ask me the hard questions. If you can't identify, or if there are signals that bring to your mind that, hey, something is wrong, something doesn't feel right. Asking the hard questions puts your mind to where the discernment comes in for you to truly understand that there may be much more behind of what really you're experiencing. Here's something to think about. A on the rebound relationship takes up the space that was left from a previous relationship and provides two things. It provides stability and it provides distraction for the rebounder. I said it takes up two things, stability and distraction for the rebounder. Let me explain to you what I mean by the stability part. The stability part is that they have found an individual not likely to give away or leave. That's what someone needs when they want to take their pain, the hurt, and the rejection and move on to a new relationship. They need to find someone that they feel that emotionally tied, that this individual will not give away or leave, will be able to substitute for what they have lost. But more importantly, it is the distraction part that's very crucial for us to really recognize that their distraction from the relationship loss is what's really driving this, because they don't want to deal with what they've suffered. They don't want to feel the pain, but more importantly, they don't want to work on the healing process for themselves. So what they do, that's the distraction part. Think about this. The definition of the word distraction means to prevent someone from giving full attention to something. It ties in. So it brings up the walls that they don't have to focus on themselves. They've brought someone in that can bring in, or two people have met, that the other brings the stability and the distraction that will make the relationship fit the person that's hurt and suffering their need for what they need right now. And whether or not that's fair or not for someone who hasn't asked all the hard questions to identify how this relationship is going along, these things come to light as the rebound relationship grows or continues. It's very important that we understand the work through process of healing oneself after a breakup. You mentioned the part of reconnecting with Christ and understanding the need for Christ, especially in times of hurt, pain, and suffering. That's so vital. That's huge. But we have to also be able to understand that we need time. We need time to be able to move suddenly, not suddenly to go into another relationship, but we need time to heal. We need time to allow Christ to be a part and to be our shield as we endure a lot of the pain and the suffering that we're feeling now. We need to understand the working through process of healing when one goes through a breakup. And that doesn't involve bringing in a third party or another party for stability and distraction. We have to be able to understand that this time alone, this period alone, this season alone will be needed in our lives, that will help us reshape us, reform us, and prepare us for what's better in our lives. But that takes time. That takes time, and we have to have the willingness to understand that it's going to take time. We have to also be able to really stop trying to define ourselves by another person while we have went through a breakup. That notion has to be pushed aside as we spend this time alone, as we spend this time of rediscovering our relationship with Christ, as we spend more time in seeking and understanding what it means to go through the healing process. You're not defined by someone after a breakup. What you're doing is learning from an experience that you went through, and now you are enduring the aftermath of someone else's decision that what they thought they wanted from you doesn't exist. But another person does not define who you are. The focus should always be how to learn how to be happy for yourself, with yourself. And you have to be happy, and you have to be able to reconnect your inner before you'll be able to be happy with someone else. Not being happy with yourself and then trying to go out and move on in another relationship is not going to take you to the levels of happiness that you will be seeking. Because your happiness hasn't started with you first. And starting with you, understanding the process of you growing and understanding that all that you've endured is something that you are learning from, you're healing from. That's going to take time, like I said, but it's the embodiment of understanding that all that you've gone through, all that you're enduring, is only going to make you and help you discover the better in your life. You can't discover better in your life dragging the pain and hurt that you've suffered from another relationship into a brand new relationship. You can't. It's not going to reshape who you are. It's not going to erase what you've experienced. It's the time set by to be alone, to grow and mature and learn from what you've experienced. Accepting what you've endured and moving. But moving not in the place where you're taking it into a new relationship, moving to the place of growth and maturity. And like I was trying to say, if you can't love yourself, how do you expect to love someone else? So it takes time for that to round out. It takes time for you to get to the point that you're comfortable with you. That you're filling yourself, you're filling your needs, you're acquiring the things that you want to be happy. You're doing the things that will make you more closer to God as you continue to seek direction for the next step in your life. That full embodiment, I think we all need before we rush out, especially experiencing the type of rejection that one can endure when he or she discovers that what they thought and what they felt has came to be not as true as they thought. But there's a couple of warning signs also that I want to talk about that we really have to zoom in regards to truly trying to understand what we are trying to be aware of and the caution that surrounds people that's on the rebound. You know, we have to be able to look for these things. We have to be able to look and really show a whole lot of discernment when it comes down to meeting people, asking the hard questions, and being aware of what people are actually saying to us. You know, it's very hard just to go out of a relationship that was very serious into another relationship. I want you to think about that. It is very serious to leave a relationship that you were committed, devoted to. Now you've discovered the hurt and the pain and the rejection, and for you to now go into another relationship. You haven't spent enough time to heal from the pain. You haven't spent enough time to heal from the suffering. That's a clear sign of those that choose to move on to rebound relationships. Again, time plays an enormous part of the process, because what we can't do is ignore or refuse to take notice or acknowledge the need to rediscover ourselves. We can't do that. We can't refuse to take notice the need to acknowledge rediscovering ourselves. That's so vital in this type of mental, well, not mental, but emotional state of mind coming out of a relationship that has brought so much pain. I use the term, we have to focus on what's better in our lives. We have to focus on what's better. We have to be able to stand firm and be able to understand, yes, we've been hurt. Yes, there's pain. Yes, we've embraced the rejection of being told that what we thought we felt or what we thought was there for us isn't no longer there. But we have to come to the point, instead of bringing that pain and that hurt into another relationship, we have to be able to rediscover ourselves and truly devote time into what's better for ourselves in our lives moving forward. Another clear sign is that you, and this is common, especially for today, is people that always feel that they have to be in a relationship. People who constantly feel they have to have a connection. There are so many people, for whatever reason, feel that they have to be paired up with somebody. A relationship ends today, they got to be in another relationship in another week. It's really insane at times to think that you can go from hot to cold so rapidly and so emotionless in regards of the pain and the suffering you take from one relationship. You have no heartache in bringing it into a new one, because you have to have someone. You have to be prepared. You have to be paired up with someone. You have to have someone there to provide you some type of emotional tie. And that's so common for today, because we have so many people that, I don't want to use the word, that are afraid to be alone, but being alone, spending time with themselves, isn't something that they look forward to, regardless of how hurt they are or what they've suffered. And what's really mind-boggling is that they race into these relationships to grab someone regardless of how hurt they've been and regardless of how much they've suffered. And that's a point to where you have to just step back and really understand the damage that you're bringing to somebody else. The damage that you're bringing to somebody else. It's a point to where we have to really come to understand, why is it so essential for so many people that's been wounded, that's been hurt, that feel that they have to take this hurt and they have to take the wounds of a past relationship and bring it into a relationship, and unnoticing to the other partner for them to feel and endure the pain and the sharpness that they don't even know where it comes from or why they're enduring it. That's so real for today, because you have people that just seek for some type of refresh, and in their mind, their refresh or their reset doesn't have the compassion that what I'm doing by bringing this pain and this hurt into this new relationship is really damaging someone that doesn't even know why they're going to be damaged. One of the things I believe that's very vital of really paying attention is when you've embraced or you're involved into a relationship and it's moving too quickly. They become so comfortable with you. And there's feelings as if they never left their old relationship. The relationship is moving too quickly. Too quickly. You know, it's you not coming up for air and there's already 1 month in, and you have an individual that now is constantly wanting to sleep over or expect you to do the same. Fast track. That's a red caution light. There is some type of an emotional setback that is existing in someone's life that they have not released or dealt with. And now I'm being placed in a position to where we have to not be on our guard, but we have to use the wisdom that's needed to really discern these types of things. Because it happens so rapidly. It happens in a matter of a limited space of time, to where we find ourselves in relationships now that we are now in a circle, in a vacuum, where so much is going on, so much is being said, and now we're placed in a position to someone is expecting a response of what we're doing, why we're doing, and why we're not doing enough of. It's moving too quickly. It's moving too quickly. And that's why it's so important to have the hard discussions, ask the hard questions, to be able to sit down and learn how to listen to what someone is saying to you. Because if we learn to listen to what someone is saying, they are actually telling us who they are. We just have to be tentative enough to be able to listen and not listen to respond. Because if we're listening to respond, we're going to miss the message. We're going to miss the message. I think another thing that's very, very crucial is when we have someone with his or her expectations of the relationship seems to be forced. They want to force the relationship on you. What does that mean? They basically want you to replace what they've lost. They want you, regardless of the time restrictions, regardless of the time spent, they're looking for you to replace what they've lost. And I can't overstate it enough. A lot of the times this happens because we don't come in and ask the right questions, the hard questions, before we've taken the relationship into stages. We've come to the point to where we have to not just be on our guard, but we have to be extremely cautious in understanding how we identify those that are on the rebound and those that are casually coming about in their lives seeking someone. I know for a lot of people that's hard to discern, but some of the things that I said give away to people that come out of a relationship being hurt and damaged and looking for that type of stability and a distraction to hold them over. And holding them over doesn't give a timetable of how long the person that's holding them over is going to keep them. Because no matter how at peace one person is in bringing on a rebounder, the pain and the hurt is still there. And it's going to be enormously tough to tie in an emotional state when you can't get an individual to open up and really talk about what's gotten them to this place in this relationship. Because you have to address the past hurt and the past pain. Part of that discussion is mandatory to have. You have to be able to really have an open heart discussion, because now the rebounder has brought in some pain, has brought in some hurt that now is affecting the other person. And it's affecting not just their relationship, but the environment, the atmosphere in which they're now trying to join together.
It sounds like one of the questions that probably should be asked then, based on what you're saying, is, and I think I remember someone who's very well known had mentioned how, I just can't remember who it was, but I remember when they were getting into a relationship, one of the questions that they asked the other person was, when was their last relationship? And the reason for the person asking that question is because they wanted to make sure that there was time of healing or time of the person dealing with the separation before they got involved with them. And so I think that's a question that I think that a lot of us avoid when we first are getting into a relationship. But with that being said, I think it's also a question that would have to be asked, even with the party who may have had the time to heal. Sometimes you just don't know what hurts and pains a person is bringing into a relationship until something occurs. So whether you have asked at the very beginning and you have the knowledge of how long they have been in the healing process, or even if they have already, I truly believe that sometimes the hurt and the pain comes up in even in a relationship that has been together for so long, but a situation has not popped up. And then that's when you also really know whether or not, the hurt and the pain is still there. So, I mean, I do get what you're saying. I just think that sometimes, whether it's a rebound or not, some things are just unavoidable, no matter how much we may give ourselves time, examine things, handle things. It's always when the truth always come out when situations occur as you're in a relationship with someone, that the truth comes out, and then you really find out whether or not this person's who they say they really are or not. So I just wanted to add that point in, because you may have people who have, for instance, you have some people who have been hurted and they have sustained from being in a relationship for years because they no longer want to be hurt again. Does that mean that they have dealt with that hurt?
Good point.
Because years have gone by? No, they actually just prevented from having to deal with it by not being in a relationship. And so you can get someone who hasn't been in a hurtful relationship for years and then finally decide to get into one, but did they really deal with the hurt and the pain prior to, even after many years? So I think that the key thing, one of the key things that you have said is, no matter what, is just taking the time that after you have been wounded, is taking the time to heal, taking the time to look at yourself, not so much to what the other person may have done, but what you have done, what you have allowed, and how you intend on doing things, I guess, differently, based on your self-examination. And that way, if you find yourself being in a relationship where the other person is a rebounder, you will already, kind of have your standards and your discernment on how to deal with someone who's trying to get into a relationship with you from being on a rebound.
I I agree. I agree with everything you just said. I think it's very important that the recognition is there. I believe that we be very open to the things in which we see, we observe, or the things that are being communicated toward us that really shed light on really at the relationship at its earliest forms. Because, no one should be able to put themselves in a situation when they're not sure where they stand at. And that means to include past relationships, or whether or not you've totally detached yourself from that. Because if those types of conversations don't take place, then that can linger, and that can always be something that's out there that's not brought up, that's not talked about. But we come to the point to where we find ourselves in these relationships, and then we have to get over someone that has used us in this relationship. Because not in all cases, but we have people in this world today that I'm very comfortable in saying that will do something like that deliberately. Because they're thinking about self. They're thinking about the stability that someone new can bring, that they think won't walk away or leave or be rejected from what they just lost. And then again, like I said earlier, the distraction of the new person allows them not to work on themselves, heal. So do I believe that we have people today deliberately that will do that? I do. I do. Because the process of dealing with someone that have brought you in, or you have allowed yourself or let yourself get involved into a rebound relationship, and you find yourself on the back end of that relationship, that process of healing begins when that hurt and that pain and that rejection is now made aware. So, deliberate or not, when we encounter those types of experiences and we've been not valued the way we think we should have been valued in a relationship, that brings that insight of not despair, but how do you move on? And how you move on through that despair is part of the healing process. A lot of what we discussed earlier. But, you have some people by design that brings in us to hurt us. And it triggers, after that type of relationship has now been announced, that can trigger pain, anger, and dishonor. Those are real emotions when you find out that you've been used. Where that stability that I spoke about does leave. Or that distraction comes to an end when that individual realizes there's something behind the both of you coming together. I mean, that dishonor, that anger, and that pain rises up. And you have to now deal with the situation that you now have found yourself in, being used by a rebounder that had, by design, a way to bring this pain and carry this hurt into this relationship that, in all honesty, you didn't recognize or notice. But on the other side of every relationship, there are important lessons that we all learn. And what I said, how do we deal with the discovery of someone that has brought us into a relationship by design and has brought in the pain and brought in the hurt due to their own rejection? We stand and we learn. We stand and we learn from what we've endured, and we leave the rest behind us. Lady P mentioned a while ago the vital part when we decide that we stand alone, that we seek Christ. We want to grow closer, to let him help us heal, to allow his freshness to be a part of the season that we now find ourselves in. We have to be able to take a real, mature look at being able to stand and understand what we've went through, learn from what we've learned, what we've been through, we've endured it, and we leave the rest behind. Because there's nothing that we can do to correct how we've been deceived. I know that's easier said than done, but that's the reality in which a lot of people find themselves after they've discovered that, oh, by the way, you knew this long time ago before you brought me in this relationship, or I thought we brought us into the relationship. A lot of people untruly are designed because, again, those that's been rejected, a lot of people don't want to deal with their own healing process. You know, and it comes to the point to where we have to now, when we now have discovered that we've been used, what's surfacing is that the intent, now we have to now use the wisdom to move on after we've discovered that, you know what, this relationship was never built or came to where there would be maturity and growth. It was designed for a substitute to allow someone to continue to go through or try to leave what they lost behind. And is that fair? No, it's not. But that's the real life of where and how we live. You know, there are some concentration areas that we have to use and be around when we've been abused by people in this type of relationship. We have to be able to zoom in and really stand and understand that there are several ways in which we are going to grow out of this. Of course, we're going to seek spiritual guidance. We want to be reconnected, but we don't want to treat ourselves like a victim. We don't want to treat ourselves like a victim. I know, again, that's easier said to do, easier said than done, but hard to do. But we can't hold on to emotional wounds. Yes, we've been deceived. But if we hold on to the emotional wounds, we're doing the same thing to the person that deceived us. We got to look at the relationship from a different set of lens. And it's not about what we've lost. It's all about what we've gained. Again, we can't change what we've experienced. It's not about what we've lost anymore. It's all about how much we've gained now that we've experienced this and we've moved on to have a better way of knowing how to see people. And what a lot of the times we gain from a lot of this is that we learn how to listen to people. When we go through an experience so trying, we truly learn how to listen to people because you want to find out, you have these long conversations with yourself and you ask yourself, where did I miss it? Where didn't see this coming? We gain a lot. And yes, we endure a lot coming out of these relationships. But this is part of the substance of growth. You got to go through something to teach or help somebody to go through something. Yes, it'll be painful. Yes, the part of being deceived and knowing that someone deliberately came into a relationship to sabotage you while they were trying to leave the love behind that rejected them. It's twofold. It can go two different ways. We got to always also control the story behind the rebound relationship. We have to control the story. It's our narrative. Now, we've discovered that this person deceived us. It's not about them no more. It's not about him. It's not about her. We have to control the narrative. We have to control what comes after the breakup. We have to control the narrative. We have to be able to go through and rehash the details of the relationship, the good and the bad. But we control the narrative. We control the narrative. And we do that, again, by seeking better in our life. Not by us doing what someone just did to us, but us spending the time that's needed to be alone and grow and mature. Find that shield. Reconnect with Christ. Because again, the learning experience that we've now discovered is going to be vital to someone else that may need us. But I say this again, we have to control the story. And we control the story by the narrative. We deal with the good and the bad, and we implement our healing process as we discover what's better and how we move on to what's better. And that takes an enormous amount of courage. That takes an enormous amount of strength. You know, we got to understand when we find ourselves in these types of positions, courage and strength is the last thing that we are really bound to. We're not looking for that because we're suffering. But when we are controlling the narrative, then we seek for that strength because now we're driving it. We've grabbed hold of what we've endured. I got that. You were deliberate. I got that. But now it's time for us to take the narrative, reform the narrative, and for us to move. And we move by the power and the strength that we have through our commitment, through our relationship, that our redefined commitment to relationship with Christ, and we move. That's the shield. That's the shield that will help us guide us through.
Can I just say something? Because we don't want to seem like as if whatever we're teaching or preaching is that we always saying, let go, give up, because people hear the word move and whatever. Because even in this situation, like you said, take control, I forget how you just said it, but with all that you just said, sometimes when the truth has come to the light, and most of the time when it comes to the light, somebody is already really truly involved in that relationship. So let's say, it comes to the light that, hey, all right, I'm in a rebound. Someone has put me into a rebound relationship. I didn't find out about this until time into it. I'm a firm believer that if, Christ is put at the center at that, with the truth coming to the light now, that if the person who has come in as on a rebound is realizes that as the other party is bringing that to the center of the situation now, and they are willing to work on that, then that's all good, fine, and dandy, because that's what love is all about, because again, I don't think anyone kind of realized that they were in a rebound relationship until time has been spent with that. Feelings have already been grown. People have already did certain things. God forbid, sometimes because things move so quickly, there's a child involved now. Someone is pregnant or whatever it may be. But if the truth is brought to the center, and Christ is put at the center of the situation, and that rebounder accept that truth, and they're willing to move forward and bring a healthy relationship out of it. Amen. To God be the glory, because that can happen. So I wanted to just say that because, we have individuals I know that are watching and listening. I know after you finish listening to the podcast, you're on your way to services and what may be. And so we never want to leave our audience thinking that we are about moving and leaving. If that's what it has going to be, that's what it's going to be. But there are some, like I said, who will say, hey, I love this person and I'm going to bring the truth. I'm going to reveal what I'm seeing, and we're going to put Christ here, and they can move on. And that's a fabulous end to that story. However, if not, then yes, you have to take control and narrate. And I like how you said that. I really do. Because sometimes when you take, people don't like to hear the word control. And it's like, oh, are you controlling? No. Because you are responsible for whatever hurt and whatever comes into your life. You are responsible. Everyone individually is responsible for what they are allowing to be filtered into their life. And so everyone has as someone said, Monica, has the accountability, has the responsibility to take a stand for what they believe, and when it comes to that point that you have to take that stand, then yes, you have that right to decide to whether you're going to move on or you're going to put Christ in the center of it. It's just sad that, to get back to your point of what you're trying to drill here, that the person who is coming in as a rebounder, when you see the light, what's going on, that they try to then still narrate, the relationship. Because I think when we all have received truth, or some people don't even like to hear the word truth, because I think we spoke about that before. My truth and your truth may be two different truths based on our own interpretation, our own perspectives, and stuff like that. So whenever things have come to the light, you want to deal with it, and then each individual have a right to make a decision whether they're going to move forward with the relationship or they're going to move away from the relationship. That's just life. We as Christians, we always want to try to hang in there, because the word says to do A, B, C, D, E. But the truth of the matter is that and y'all always hear me say, I'm a firm believer. If you have another party that doesn't want to do A, B, C, D, and E, then you have a right to move along. God doesn't force us to do anything that we don't want to do. He will bring enlightenment. He will bring what's good and what's bad. But at the end of the day, it's always about choices. It's always about choices. And so when we make a choice, we always say, whatever choice you make, be ready to deal with that. If this is your choice, you deal with it and you move on. Because at the end of the day, only you can deal with the choices that you have made, the decisions that you have made. When we find ourselves staying in things because we're doing something for someone else, or we're trying whatever it may be, we find ourselves regretting, some of the things that we may have decided to do because we made those decisions based on someone else, But I just want to get in and say that because, we all, those who have been following us, ourselves, you and I, we strongly believe in marriages and relationships and love. We strongly do, but we also believe that no one should be a doormat to someone else's madness. And they know you brought to their attention, or they refuse that, the truth that you're bringing, or the enlightenment that you're bringing, it's just not for them. You know what I'm saying? Relationships are hard. Relationships are very hard, and relationships only come about when two people say they care enough for each other, they love each other, and they're willing to go through thick and thin. And that's going to mean that is going to mean that it's going to be some giving, it's going to be some taking away, it's going to be some peeling, it's going to be some purging, it's going to be a whole lot of things. But the bottom line is that when you do come to the point of what you've been talking about, this morning, both parties at the time that the truth is on the table is going to have to make a decision. And again, we as Christian folks don't like to hear, separation. We don't like to hear walking away. We don't like to hear moving on. But no one has a right. No one should be subjected to be miserable, in a relationship because one party chooses not to heed. That's just, I can only say it. I can only say it this way: the God that I serve, I just don't believe that's the God that God that I serve wants me to be in a relationship that is just, no give and take, no happiness, no, it's just, life is too short, and everybody is trying to love, everybody is trying to grow, and you find yourself stuck with someone who doesn't, or who doesn't even care, or who could care less, because it's about self. I think we have all been given the word to rightly divide and to discern, what is and what isn't. And when you come to that point, only you have a right to make that decision. As you consult with the Lord, as you go into prayer, as you seek Him, everyone has a right at some point to say, hey, I'm either in it or I'm out of it. And you move on. Either way, you move on because you're in it, or you move on because you're out of it, And like you said, you take those experiences and you become good listener. And that is the truth. I sat here and I listened to you for a while, and when you got to a certain point, I said, oh my God, I remember when it was exactly, at first I was like, I'm just really just listening to everything you're saying. And it was when you got to that point about narrating, it brought me to a relationship that I was in, and it's the same relationship right now, that I'm dealing with. That it started out as a rebound for someone, and I was the one that was caught in it. You understand what I'm saying? And and at the point when I got the truth and understand what was going on, I had to narrate. That's when your message became life to me today. I had to take control. I had to narrate. You know what I'm saying? What I will and what I will not. And it's strange that people who are in a rebound, this is what came to my mind when I was listening. Oh, we are over our time, I believe.
Well, go ahead.
Ooh, I gotta wrap my thought up again. I just remember we are 5 minutes over our time and people got to go. But I remember the person saying to me, well, if you would have just trusted me, we would have been okay. No, you came in as a rebound. You bought lies, and you bought, you wanted me to accept the fact that you already had a relationship, was living with it, and what, huh? And so he wanted to dictate and narrate our relationship now. And I was like, you must be crazy. I didn't have a decision in that. And that's what rebounders do. They come into a relationship where they think they have control, and you don't have a decision in that relationship.